Hello, welcome to GMAT Skill of the Day. Today you're going to look at 700 plus level application of GMAT sentence correction concepts varying from parallelism to subjunctive verb to ellipses to modifiers to pronouns on a single sentence correction type sentence. And mind you, this sentence is not from any official source. This sentence is from an article that I came across while I was reading Economist, and it makes for a very interesting learning. And that's what you're going to see in this GMAT skill of the day. So let's get started. Now, before I go into the details of this, I want to ask you one question. When you read sentences from journals such as Wall Street Journal, Economist, New York Times, do you read it just to understand the meaning? Or do you also, once you understand the meaning, take another step, extend that and evaluate it for grammatical correctness? Okay, I want to leave you with this question and go right into our discussion for this question. Okay, so here's the sentence. I got the sentence from this very interestingly written article, What China Gets Wrong. It's in this edition of Economist, April 16 to April 22nd. So let's read this sentence. In the fall of 2022, China's president is expected, so he's expected to use a 5-yearly party congress, to use this government entity to launch a third term as its chief. Okay, so China's president wants to launch a third term as its chief. It's whose chief? China's chief, right? Okay. In defiance of norms. Okay, in defiance of norms means that this action to launch third term as China's chief is against certain norms. What kind of norms? Norms that he step aside after two. Okay, what are the norms? What is typically accepted? What typically accepted thing is that he step aside after two terms, right? Two terms. Obviously, we are talking about the number of terms that China's president can serve as the president, right? So he wants to launch, using this government entity, Congress, he wants to launch a third term as China's president, but that is against the norm. So what is the norm? The norm is that he should just serve 2 terms. Okay. And opening a pathway to lifelong rule. Okay, and opening a pathway to lifelong rule. Okay, what does this talk about? Okay, let me read again. He wants to launch a third term as the chief of China, and that is going to result in opening a pathway to lifelong rule. So this entire thing, this opening of a pathway is the effect of launching the plan to launch a third term as its chief. Okay, so the meaning is very clear, right? He's expected to launch a third term as its chief. That's against the norms. Okay, so let's write that down. And by the way, if he does this, this will open a pathway to lifelong rule. Lifelong rule. Okay, so that's the meaning that the sentence intends to communicate. So we understood that. Now, remember the question that I asked you earlier. The question that I asked you earlier was, when you read this sentence in a reputed journal, do you stop at this point or do you evaluate the grammatical correctness of the sentence? So we are going to do just that, okay? So let's first take a look at this pronoun here, it's. When you were reading the sentence, did you even for a moment think whether it's could refer to Congress or does it refer to China's? Okay, frankly, it was very clear from the context that it refers to China. There is no reason why you would say that China's president is expected to launch a third term as Congress's chief. That doesn't make sense at all, right? So there is no pronoun ambiguity at all. Look what we have done here. What we have done here is you utilized your conceptual understanding to further solidify as you read this sentence from Economist. Okay, what's happening is that you are enhancing your application of concepts that you've learned in the course. Okay, Now, for those of you who want more information about pronouns, e-GMAT students, you know that you can go through the e-GMAT course, complete module dedicated to pronouns. And if you're not e-GMAT students, definitely look at this article, Debunking Pronoun Myths. Very interesting article that's going to address a lot of pronoun doubts that you may have. Okay. All right, let's look at the next one here. Now you're going to evaluate this verb step. Okay. Look at what its subject is, he. He is singular, okay, but step is plural, okay. So would you not question how the economist has used this construction, right? And this is where you go back to your understanding of the meaning. What did you see here? You saw that the author is talking about certain norms. Now, norms necessitates, the use of word norms necessitates the use of subjunctive verb, okay? And that is what you see over here. His step is the application use of subjunctive verb, okay? That his step, to be exactly precise, that his step is the usage of subjunctive verb. So this verb usage is absolutely correct. And look what you did. The knowledge that you gained from subjunctive verb, right? You applied that conceptual understanding over here as you were reading this sentence in Economist. Okay. Now let's take a look at the next one over here. Two. Okay. When you saw this word two, did you think about what two? Two apples, two oranges, two countries, two terms? Absolutely, two terms. It wouldn't have made sense for two to be descriptive information for apples, oranges, countries, right? Because that's not the context that you're talking about in this sentence. The context in this sentence is two terms. We are talking about launching a third term, and here we're describing the norm. What's the norm? That he step aside after two countries? No, after two terms. So there was no doubt in your head as to what this two represents, right? So this is also absolutely correct. There is no mistake over here. And this is the application of concept of ellipses, okay? For the sake of brevity, the author can choose to eliminate certain words, to omit certain words, as long as the meaning that the sentence communicates is not lost, is not made ambiguous, does not become ambiguous. Okay, so another learning here of the application of concept of ellipses. Okay, last one. Okay, let's take a look at this list. In defiance of norms and opening a pathway to lifelong rule. Now, when we read the sentence to understand the intent behind what the author wants to communicate, what we recognized was that in defiance of norms, this was simply describing what this action is, right? Description of this action. What action? To launch a third term as its chief, right? This was the description. But when we read this part here, opening a pathway, this was a more specific description. This was the effect, right? This was no longer a description, a generic description. This was more of an effect, okay? So what you see over here is these two are seemingly in a parallel list. These two are element number 1 and element number 2 in a list, okay? But first of all, logically, these are not parallel. Okay, why do I say they are not parallel? Because this one offers a generic description. The first element offers a generic description, whereas the second one offers a very specific description in terms of the effect, okay? Which means that these two are functionally not behaving the same way, okay? Thus, they are not logically parallel. Second thing that you see is they are not even grammatically parallel. There is no consistency between the two, okay? This one is a verb ing, comma plus verb ing modifier, and this one over here is a prepositional phrase, okay? Prepositional phrase, and this one is a comma plus verb ing. So there you go. You have two different modifiers being used to modify one single entity, right? Two different, grammatically different modifiers being used, right? And these two modifiers are modifying the entity in two different ways, right? They're presenting two different aspects, right? So one is giving a generic description, the other is giving a specific effect. So for that reason, this sentence is not parallel. Okay. So of all the errors that we asked you about in the community poll, and I'm going to show you that, right? The only error that this sentence has is the parallelism error, okay? And we understood why there is a parallelism error. Now, if I were to ask you, how can you correct the sentence? What would your answer be? Think about it. So here's a possible correction, okay? To launch a third term as its chief, in defiance of norm, so this is now, as I said, descriptive information, and this is now verb ing, which is presenting the result of the initial entity over here. Okay, so that's a way to correct the sentence, a very simple correction, which only requires a little bit of tweaking. Okay, now if you have any doubts about how parallelism works, you have this entire module in the e-GMAT course that teaches you the ABCs, the 1, 2, 3s of parallelism. Okay, so let's wrap this up. What did we learn? The biggest learning for me is that all of you, as you are reading these sentences, articles from these reputed journals, all of you should read them with the SCI. And what is the SCI? Step number 1, you read the sentence to understand its meaning. Okay, everything that the author wants to communicate. Step number 2, analyze the sentence for its grammatical correctness. Has the author used correct English language constructs to communicate their meaning? Very, very important. Okay. Why is that important? It's important because each sentence in such publications consists of multiple concepts. You saw a very short sentence. It wasn't an uber long sentence, right? A short sentence that tested you on parallelism, subjunctive, ellipses, modifiers, right? Pronouns, right? So that was the opportunity, and I want you all to grab such opportunities so that you can continue to enhance your GMAT sentence correction skills, which would help you out with general comprehension skills that are required for all of verbal. Okay, so these are the 3 concepts that we looked at in this single sentence, and I want you to take the learnings of looking at every sentence that you read in these reputed journals with the SCI. On that note, happy learning.